Senator Cramer, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Fox, for being here and for your service. It's great to see you again. I'm gonna maybe steer this a little bit along the same path that Senator Cardin was just talking about, or that you were talking about in response to his very specific question, and that is you referenced your co-regulators, state and tribal regulators, and I'm just going to draw a little bit of an illustration and let you expand on it. So I think the EPA first came into North Dakota in 2013, 2015, did some baseline sampling, found basically didn't find any PFAS, at least of the 6 most prominent, most often present chemicals. And then in 2018, the North Dakota Department of Environmental Quality did a much larger baseline survey, and certainly found some, but again, very minor, nothing really that affected drinking water significantly, or really in any dangerous way. You know, there are a couple of fire safety sites or training facilities, but again, good cleanup, and we're blessed with a geology that protects the water table pretty well. So all in all, things are pretty good. I draw that little bit of an illustration because many of our water systems, like many of the members here, of course, are rural water systems. Not a lot of financial resources, spread out population, a chemical that largely doesn't exist or barely exists. So as you're doing the roadmap, I was heartened by like I said, what you just said to Senator Cardin. And maybe if you could just expand a little bit on that, that relationship with tribes and states, and how to craft rules that aren't overly burdensome to particularly rural systems that if needed, I guess we could help finance, but we don't want to burden them if it's unnecessary. Just talk through that a little bit with me about how you see that relationship working out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to see you, Senator Cramer. Under administration, I think one of the best tools that we have as we think very thoughtfully about partnering with our co-regulators, the state, is the leadership that Administrator Regan brings. Mm-hmm. As a state environmental regulator, he's very attuned to the importance of being in partnership with the states, like not telling states what to do, but figuring it out together. And we're really aspiring to do that, not only in our PFAS work, but in all of the rules that we're undertaking at EPA. So with each of the actions that are regulatory in nature in the roadmap, whether it's the CERCLA hazardous designation or the drinking water standard, we will have ample and robust dialogue with states. We have formal consultations with states and tribes on each and every one of these rules. We have to make sure it's meeting the needs, the very diverse needs of states across the country. So you certainly have Administrator Regan's commitment, my commitment to do that, both in PFAS, but again, in all of the things that we're doing at EPA.
Speaking as a former state regulator, I find that background of Administrator Regan's to be one of the more endearing qualities, and he's got lots of them, but we regulators don't often talk endearingly about one another. Anyway.
I will make sure to let him know you said that.
I appreciate that. Well, along the same theme then, let's talk just a little bit about WOTUS, since we have a minute and a half left, because it is kind of the same lines, and I know you find yourself one rule, then not, and then a new rule, and then now not, and the NWPR, which we in North Dakota thought was a pretty good rule, not perfect, but pretty clearly defined the role of states and the role of the federal government, and encourages everybody to stay in their own lane. But now we're on path to what you like to call a more durable rule, perhaps, and I think we'd all like a more durable or a sustainable rule that doesn't have to get ping-ponged between administrations and courtrooms. So that said, maybe just talk a little bit about, and thank you for your commitment to come out to my little state and talk to some people that deal with a very, very diverse landscape as it relates to water and WOTUS. Talk a little bit about your approach to that now that you're partway through this discovery process in coming up with a new permanent rule.
Absolutely, and I'm looking very much forward to the visit as well. So, my approach, my position on waters of the United States hasn't changed since I was last before this committee. We have over the summer and early fall been doing very robust engagement, pre-publication engagement around waters of the United States. As I think we've described in other settings, we're still moving forward with a two-step rulemaking process. The first rule is, a rule to promulgate the kind of pre-2015 regulations, and then we'll move forward with a second rule to get to, to build on that foundation. Of course, Senator, the landscape continues to change around waters of the United States. As we, Army and EPA, continue this work, two district courts in Arizona and New Mexico have both vacated the navigable waters protection rule. So based on those two court decisions, the concerns that those two courts had, we have instructed both the regional EPA regional offices as well as the Army district offices to move forward with implementation of that 1986 regulatory regime. And so that is currently what the law of the land is until we move forward with our rulemaking. We do anticipate proposing that step one rule before the end of the year, by the end of 2021. And when we propose that, we will again do ample and robust stakeholder engagement in North Dakota and really around the country.
I look forward to that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. June.